This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovators Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Well, welcome to Killer Innovations. I'm your host, Phil McKinney. We are here in the studio in Colorado. Been coming off the road from a little bit of travel. But we're back here and catching up and getting some more shows produced. We'll be also getting ready for the Consumer Electronics Show. So as I've said in the last couple shows, if you find yourself in Las Vegas for CES this year, look us up. We will have the mobile studio there. So with that, we will get to the point of being able to give you a tour, show you the studio. And if you've got an interesting guest with an interesting story, we would love to meet them and possibly even do an interview with them in Las Vegas. If you have a guest that you think would be interesting from CES, let me know. Just drop a note at phil@killerinnovations.com. And I'll hand that off to Andrew, who's the associate producer here, who produces and schedules all of our guests. And today we do have a guest that's joining us all the way from New Jersey, albeit via Denmark. I'll throw that in, is Jarl Jensen. Jarl is the author of Optimizing America, and we got the pitch for him to be on the show, and it was it's an interesting kind of thought process behind innovation and creativity and the role and impact of all of that with regards to the economy and economic expansion and all of those types of things. So first off, Jarl, thanks for coming and joining us here at Killer Innovations.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So give us a little bit of background on yourself. I'm not sure many of the listeners maybe aren't following you or don't understand your history in that. So give us just a quick little a snippet of your background.
Well, this is the right show for me. I'm an innovator at heart. I'm an ideas guy. My father was an inventor. Growing up, we played something we called the invention game. He would find an object and we would come up with ideas for how to use it. So I really grew up with this notion that ideas and innovation was the key to my future and success. I wrote my first patent, or I was a co-owner of a patent with my father at the age of 16. I think actually it was 18. Or 19. I'm not quite sure my age at that time. But and that patent was for sacral wound healing. And it actually launched a company called Euromed back in 1991. That company was moved from Denmark to the United States in 96. And I eventually wound up being CEO of that company, and it grew to about $20 million in sales, and we just wound up selling it 2 years ago at a record high multiple for a privately held company. At least as far as I know, it's a record high multiple. It was a great deal. It was exciting exit, but I have many other patents associated with that company. Today, I work basically exclusively with ideas. I have several other patents, and I'm working on 2 startups right now. One in an advanced burn care product, and another one in some advanced orthodontics products. Basically, a medical device. In the medical device field, but along the way, in studying the art of innovation, where ideas come from, I noticed this glaring place in our society where there is zero innovation. And frankly, when you dig deep enough, it gets a little scary why we're not innovating there. And that's the economy.
Yeah, and that's interesting, right? Because we actually think of the economy as really being the byproduct of innovation. right? It's whatever.
The economy is it's supposed to be the exchange of work and services between people. In today's world, though, when you follow the money flows, and understanding that money is the medium of exchange, that you and me, we can't exchange a service if there isn't money between us. I mean, we can barter, but that's really unusual in today's world. So without money between us, there is no medium of exchange. And in today's society, if you follow the money, you realize that all money comes from debt, that money is only printed when somebody signs a mortgage or takes out a loan. So money is printed to service the loans that commercial banks offer the citizens of the country. So the economy has been changing over the last 100 years to a point where it has a very narrow definition and source for where and how it works.
So you talk about, again, I mean, when I think about the economy, right, it is that exchange. But what generates, for instance, economic growth is where, if I've done some great new innovation, what is it that is going to drive that economic expansion, right?
Well, we have to look at the type of innovation. If you have a blue sky sort of new market innovation, yeah, certainly that can grow the economy with a new service that's never existed before. But most innovation, let's take the autonomous driving vehicle and truck. The car isn't new. The truck delivery service isn't new. The only thing that's new is that there's no taxi driver and there's no truck. There's no people involved with the service or the delivery. And so the innovation is more contractionary than it is expansionary.
Yeah, well, and you also get into the issue of destruction. All right, if you look at the Ubers or Airbnb and what they've done to the industries that they've attacked.
Sure.
For instance, the destruction of value of taxi medallions in the city of New York, which used to go for high six figures. Now you can get it for, low five figures for that same medallion in a relatively short period of time. So you also see innovations that you could argue also play a role in economic destruction. But that's not any different than hasn't been happening for the last 100 years, right?
No, it isn't different. The difference is, I think at this point, is that it used to be that the economy had so much ground to cover, so many blue skies, blue oceans, new territories to expand into, new products and services to provide, that any destruction, any contractionary effects of new technologies were overwhelmed by the new services and new products coming online. The issue just is that most of the new technologies and advancements are more contractionary than they are expansionary. And so, you're talking about a huge economic system with many products and many services. And so it's a gradual process. It's not, the one day nobody has a job. It's a slow process. And as you can tell from the rate of economic expansion, the point of which the economy is no longer expanding and starting to contract is coming closer and closer. The day when the fewer jobs are created than are being taken away, that day is coming. It might still be 20 or 30 years away, but it's coming. And we are feeling the pressure of it, right? We're feeling that getting a higher paycheck is hard. There's many people working on a minimum wage. They don't have health care. They're struggling. I mean, what is it? 70% of Americans have less than $1,000 in savings, and I think 60% have less than $400 in savings. I mean, these people, for me, if I had only had $1,000 in bank, I would be in sheer panic. And we were talking about 70% of the country. So this is a slow process. It's I kind of an analogy would be either the frog in boiling water that doesn't realize the water is boiling, or the elephant with the thin rope, the adult elephant with the thin rope holding it tied down to the ground because it believes it can't get away from this thin rope because it had that rope on when it was a child. I feel like as a society, as humanity, this is how the economy has evolved. We're just so used to it that we don't see what's the effects of it.
So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back from this commercial break, we're continuing on our discussion with Jarl Jensen, talking about optimizing America. Don't go anywhere, and we'll be right back after this quick and short commercial break. Welcome back to Innovations. We're continuing our conversations with Jarl Jensen, talking specifically about innovation, and more specifically about innovating the economy. And as we were talking in the first segment, we were talking about the fact that, a lot of businesses innovate. We're seeing, more and more businesses looking as innovation as a new capability or expanding the capability in order for them to be successful as a business. Why haven't we thought about innovating the economy before?
Well, there are definitely reasons for why the people who run the Federal Reserve are not interested in innovation. It's a little bit of a longer topic, but as innovators, and as your listeners are innovators, that shouldn't be that should frustrate us. What's exciting about innovation is the potential of the idea, the potential of the innovation on the economy, on our own success, on our own future. And so why wouldn't we be getting excited about adding new capabilities, new innovations to our core economic engine? Why wouldn't we be getting excited? Why wouldn't they be doing anything about that? Well, I hate to say this, but our economy has been privatized by commercial banks. Commercial banks bought the rights to printing money in the Federal Reserve Act of 1913. That basically, essentially, that's why it says a Federal Reserve note on every single dollar bill, $5 bill, and so on. What that means is that the private corporation, that is the Federal Reserve, that is owned by commercial banks, they own the rights to money. So banks own the rights to money, and that should scratch your head. And so obviously their main purpose is to make sure that the health of their owners, the commercial banks, stays as healthy as possible. So basically the purpose of our economy today is to keep the banks healthy. And so if you took a bunch of innovators from any other industry and put them in charge of currency and our money, very quickly you come up with some very different ideas of how to run the economy and how to use money for the benefit of everyone instead of just the commercial banks. It is simple. It is that simple. Anybody can innovate at this level because they haven't innovated in 100 years.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, right? Because we talk a lot about on this show about what we call the innovation antibodies. So if you're the change agent inside of a large organization that's been around for a large number of years, right? I was the CTO at Hewlett Packard. And you would think HP, Silicon Valley, Bill Hewlett and David Packard, Silicon Valley, it's got to be highly innovative. No. When you're $120 billion and 240,000 employees, the whole purpose of public corporations is what? To serve the shareholders, right? So in the case of the Federal Reserve, the equivalent of the shareholders, what you're saying is the commercial banks. It's not any different than large public companies. And then you get caught in the quarterly trap. I got to make my revenue number for the quarter. I've got to give a return or the shareholders aren't happy. And therefore you take the whole process of what is it I really need to do to transform to serve a broader purpose than just simply the shareholders. But in effect, the Securities and Exchange rules tell public companies that your one and only sole purpose is the shareholder. You can't consider anything else in your prioritization setting, except now you have B corporations where you can do social good, but you declare that. So I'm trying to do this comparison of what, a public company, if you're a chief innovation officer at Procter & Gamble or Kroger, or, I'm listing off people that I know listen to the show, or me at HP. You're the change agent trying to innovate, and you're running headlong right into the buzzsaw of the innovation antibodies. And
Right.
It sounds like the economy is just like that.
Oh, yeah, but the price, this is the sort of the ultimate problem, because the economy controls everything, right? Think about it. If all money stems from loans, that means all work is created because of some loan was made. And basically, and you get into this idea that, well, only wealthy people can borrow money because only they have the assets that they can borrow the money against. And so the only work is created for the purpose of serving wealthy people. So you have a very limited area of where you can serve in order to earn money. So the whole economy is so constrained and defined by wealth, which is obviously the case here in America. So all the opportunities are being sucked out of the economy because we can only serve such few masters, the wealthy billionaires who are borrowing the majority of the money that can be created and printed.
Well, what would you say if someone were to talk, though, about entrepreneurs, right? So even entrepreneurs who don't come from money. And if you look at the total mix of the total number of jobs that come from, quote, small businesses being, under 50 employees, is the lion's share of the employment base in the United States. The employee base is not from large corporations. It's from small business and small business people who typically have, 3 or fewer locations in their total mix. So, do you think that still applies? That it's only for the wealthy?
No, but all these entrepreneurs, you might not call them wealthy, but all of them definitely took out a loan, probably a credit card loan. They have they're definitely borrowing money to make these things happen. So might be our definition of what wealthy is, but the bottom line is that 1% or 0.1% of the country has the majority of the wealth, and therefore they have the ability to borrow money. And so therefore they are the source of the money that's trickling out from these loans into the economy. Absolutely, they're not the source of job creation because they rarely have new things that they want done, right? The innovation is coming from the people who are desperately seeking to get a financial foothold and become wealthy themselves. That's where the innovation is, because that's where the desperation is. Just like you said, the people who are billionaires already, they can, click their fingers and make anything happen because they've got the money and resources to do it. But everybody else have got to tap into their mind to get it to work and that's why the jobs are getting created at that level.
Exactly. And you were talking about the fact of taking credit cards, and fans of the show know this story. I did 13 startups before I got my first IPO. So it's
right.
And the amount of credit card debt my wife and I ran up to fund those 13 startups would be is eye popping. Albeit it's completely paid off. I'm out from underneath that. But I know a lot of entrepreneurs who beg, borrow, steal, friends and family, angel investors who, get bought into the idea and go from there. So we're going to take another quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to continue our conversation with Jarl Jensen talking about optimizing America. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Killer Innovations. We are continuing our conversations with Jarl Jensen talking about his work around innovating the economy. Now, Jarl, we were talking during the commercial break around the broader impact of the economy. When you think about the fact that we haven't innovated the economy in hundreds of years, short of we can also get into the whole cryptocurrency thing, which is changing all of that. I've had Raul Sood, who's the CEO for Unicorn, on, and he's got some big backers, Kuchar from Hollywood, and a whole bunch of very high profile people backing him on his cryptocurrency work. But just talking about just the economy as a whole, the fact that we don't innovate it has a whole ripple effect as a result of that, correct?
Yeah, I mean, the economy is everything, right? The money flow, the exchange of money between people is how we provide goods and services to each other. It's the work we do. Obviously, any direction, anything that people do is about the economy. And if money flows only start from banks granting loans to people, well, then the banks are basically determining the direction of technology, the direction of the work we do, our product. And so the consequences of this narrowly defined method of running our economy and not looking to innovate, change, and make it better has obvious consequences for every single person, and has consequences for our international relations with other countries like China or Syria, for that matter, war. I mean, we can even talk about the fact that the military-industrial complex in America is all about jobs in regions or states all across the country. And so funding to support those jobs is perpetuated through Congress. The fact that we're so desperate to have jobs is because jobs are only created when banks fund loans. Once we start getting into this, we realize, okay, this has got to stop because this is ridiculous. Just a tiny bit of imagination inside the Federal Reserve turns the whole system on its head and makes everybody's lives much better. It doesn't mean, Venezuelan hyperinflation. It does mean we can put people first instead of banks first. There are, if you understand engineering concepts, for example, if you control the inputs into a system, you can control the outputs into the system. Our economy should be working the same way. We should have no more financial collapses and devastating recessions, because if we control the proper inputs into our economy, we will control the outputs of our economy and control our future as well. Doesn't that sound a lot better than not knowing if we're going to have a financial collapse tomorrow, next week, or predicting it from a year from now? Sounds crazy to me.
Yeah, but if I play devil's advocate, though, I mean, it's one of those systems where, it's worked pretty well. I mean, we do go through the collapses and those types of things, but it has been one of the more stable economies around the world. And how do you deal with the whole concept of we need to change this? How do you test that hypothesis without transforming the entire system? Is there a way to test this hypothesis on a smaller scale? Because it's the old innovation antibody problem. Like, well, I'm the expert, or that will never work, or Venezuela tried it and look what it did. Look what happened to them. Whatever.
Well, the closest country to trying it is actually Switzerland. Mm-hmm. They had a vote to take the bankers out of the Federal Reserve, but the media, the marketing behind that campaign was highly funded by the bank. So it was not a successful vote. But that was actually the first time any country has voted to take the banks out of their central bank. Mm-hmm. That was in Switzerland. So the debate is starting to happen. Should banks be in charge of our currency? Should banks own our currency? If you want to understand a little bit more about why the American economy has been so stable, you really have to look back at how the whole global economy became systemized in the same way. Why is the Swiss banking system the same as the American banking system, and it dates back to a World War II 1944 agreement, the Bretton Woods Agreement, where 44 countries got together and decided to run their economies the same way to control inflation and so on, and putting commercial banks in charge of the currencies. But the thing that was so amazing for America and really created how the power of America is that the American dollar became the reserve currency of all these other 44 nations, and to this day, 60% of global currency reserves is the U.S. dollar. It's an alternative to having gold as a reserve. So if you want to talk about why the economy is so stable, why the dollar is so powerful, well, it's because all the other countries around the world have to put U.S. dollars into reserve in order to stabilize their own currency. Basically, the U.S. dollar has become the equivalent of modern gold. And so obviously that's a very powerful stabilizing effect for the American economy and currency.
So if you know, again, thinking about it from the context of the innovation antibodies, the people who are fighting against these ideas of yours, how do you answer that question around, it's kind of like
I can tell you right now, we can start with the definition of intelligence. Okay. In chess, when you make a move, you can judge that move by the number of options that you have on your next move. So if you make a move and your opponent puts you at checkmate, well, that was a really bad move, right? Mm-hmm. Because you have 0 options and the game's over.
Right.
Well, and so when it comes to what the Federal Reserve is doing, they have given themselves one option, which is to increase or decrease interest rates on bank loans. Right? That is their only lever. That is the definition of unintelligence. They're being as stupid as you can be. The truth is they can have so many different options, right? They could have variable interest rates, depending on if their loans are good or bad for humanity. Now, I know they call that picking winners, but I'm sorry, we're having all kinds of environmental problems, global war problems. So maybe starting to pick winners for humanity instead of picking winners or winning situations for banks is more important right now. Our future as humanity is more important than the future of the financial system. Geez, I hope that's not up for debate. There are other options. There is only one way of getting money into the economy. That's through debt. Well, doesn't that create a world full of debt? Yeah. The global debt right now is $244 trillion. America's total debt is $74 trillion, and our national debt is $21 trillion. You want to know why that's happening? That's because the only way to get the economy going is to borrow money. Isn't that kind of silly? Couldn't we come up with some other ideas on how to get the economy going, right? And couldn't we test these ideas without, going all out? We could test it slowly, a little bit at a time. The whole idea is to give ourselves optionality, to be intelligent about how we run the economy. I mean, is that so stupid? No, what we're doing right now is stupid. And we're literally risking the future of humanity just so the banks can have their way. Come on. This has got to stop.
Jarl, obviously, this is a topic you're extremely passionate about. As we wrap up this segment, if people want to track what you're doing, what you're thinking, and your proposals, where's the best place for them to follow you at?
Right now, I have a blog called Optimizing America. I will be transferring that blog to my personal name, Jarl Jensen, or Jensen, depending on the language you want to say my name in. You can also find me on Amazon, where I have 3 books under Jarl Jensen, my Author Central page.
Great. Jarl, thanks a lot for joining us today here at Innovations. As we wrap this up, don't go anywhere. Stay by for the 4th segment, where we'll be sharing this week's episode of 5 Minutes to New Ideas, and we'll be right back after this break. Back in the early days of this show, I would share what I called a killer question in each episode. These questions were designed to be used in your personal, team, or organization's innovation efforts. Now, based on feedback from listeners just like you, we've decided to bring it back with some improvements. Each episode of the Killer Innovations has a segment that I'm now calling 5 Minutes to New Ideas. It's designed for the creative mind looking for that next great idea. Each episode will challenge you to think differently about yourself, your business, and your products and services by asking unique, funny, and sometimes crazy questions. These questions are designed to force you to look beyond the obvious and to uncover ideas and opportunities you never before considered. So, get out your notebook and be ready to uncover that game-changing idea. Here is 5 Minutes to New Ideas. Do you sell atoms or bytes? Do you think that your answer could change over the next 5 years? Think about Amazon and the Kindle. Jeff Bezos asked, "What is my role going to be if the nature of books changes?" He realized that to stay relevant and necessary, his company needed to retain control over something tangible and physical. There could have been other options. Amazon could have bet that the entire reading experience would fully transition to audio. But initially, they ultimately gambled that the act of reading was still integral to the enjoyment of a book. It was later they acquired Audible to ensure that they could serve customers no matter what format they chose. So how do you stay in control of an experience when your product is going from atoms to bytes? Think about what a profound change that is. What would you do if your physical product, one that has been around unchanged for hundreds or even thousands of years, suddenly seemed headed towards obsolescence? How do you still keep yourself relevant? An essential part of the transition or the experience, especially if, like Amazon, you are primarily functioning as the middleman between the product and the customer. How do you keep that link alive? For Amazon, that link is providing the medium that brings the printed word to the reader. First, that medium was books, and now for many, it's the Kindle. Amazon has been smart to keep physical ownership over the process of reading. Even though a reader may have transferred allegiances to digital media, Amazon is still controlling access to the thing in a reader's hand. Now granted, there are plenty of competitors springing up, all with their own pros and cons, but none has both the sheer heft of Amazon's catalog and the huge advantage of having arrived so early in the market. A Kindle, like the Hoover vacuum cleaner before it, became both a specific name of the product and a catch-all term for its category. That is a great place to be. It will be interesting to see how far Amazon pushes the possibilities of the Kindle and how its relationships with publishers and authors will develop. Publishers are no longer in the business of selling paper, yet most still act as though they are. From my own experience of releasing my book through a big-name publisher, I found myself caught just at the flip from the print to digital was happening, and it was quite evident that they were caught off guard. For instance, the publishing industry is still figuring out exactly how to handle pricing on ebooks, and especially how ebooks pricing can and should be aligned with the traditional book pricing in a way that makes sense to the consumer. Customers are not happy to pay more for a Kindle edition than a hardcover edition of the same book. And with the growing number of people listening to audio releases of books, the consumer confusion on pricing is becoming an even bigger issue. So why is it that some books are more expensive as digital than as hardcovers? It just doesn't make sense to consumers, and it's a downright dangerous situation for all concerned if book piracy takes off in the same way that music piracy did years ago. You don't want to antagonize your customers to make them feel like fools for buying what you are selling. Offering a digital download for more than a hardcover does just that. Well, maybe it's too late. My book, which came out in 2012, is illegally available for free on more than 110 sites around the world and in more languages than I even translated the book into. Do not get caught by surprise from a competitor that you don't even see coming that's going to disrupt your industry. Never stop asking yourself, how could my product change in 5 years or 10 years? Pick the time frame, but ask yourself, how could my product change in 5 years? Now look deep into the change dynamics that could give you a weak signal that change is happening. How? By asking yourself, what societal, economic, and demographic changes will affect your customers over the next 5 years? Societal, what's the change in perceptions, etc.? Economic growth, markets up and down, or demographic. So what societal, economic, and demographic changes will affect your customers over the next 5 years? Are you missing weak signals about the future of your industry because you feel like the seismic shifts will not affect you? Do not stick your head in the sand. Seismic shifts affect everybody. Change is inevitable. How do you respond is what separates the winners from the losers. So the question is, which are you? I'm Phil McKinney, and thanks for listening. Thanks for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join in. If you have any comments or suggestions, drop me a note over at phil@killerinnovations.com. Now, the reason I've been doing this show since 2005 is to pay back my early mentor by paying it forward. My first mentor, Bob Davis, invested an immense amount of time in training and coaching me, which had a major impact on my career. When I went back and asked him how I could pay him back, he just laughed and said I couldn't. I had to pay it forward. If I could ask for a favor, could you help me pay it forward? How? 1, give us a rating wherever you get your podcasts, as that helps spread the word. And 2, by telling others about the show. This episode of Killer Innovations was produced by the Innovators Network. You can find the show notes and the entire show catalog over at killerinnovations.com. I'll talk to you next week. In the meantime, go out and change the world with your killer innovation. Bye-bye.